All right, let's welcome our bones into an inversion today. So we'll start with just looking around that we got all our props for restoring. We got blankets, we got blocks, we got a belt, maybe you have a therapy ball, and you got a bolster right up next to the wall. If you're concerned about how you're going to get up this high, you can always do this without a bolster. All the instructions would be the same. You would keep it nearby for some of the hip openers we'll do in the beginning, but you certainly want to have a wall space to begin today. Have a sandbag or a bag of rice nearby. And when we bring our legs upside down, I find it helpful to be kind of, I don't know, just curious about how I'm going to move and rotate things upside down, because it's not just that I get my legs up, it's the circulation situation, internally. It's quite a dynamic for our heart. So even though it's all located in the same spots, right, when you get upside down, it does transfer circulation and many things in our body in a new way. So sit up next to the wall. If you tend to get upside down different, maybe you scoot up to the wall on your back. I've seen all kinds of ways of doing this, but I want you to sit so that your hip is on the side of the bolster, so the bolster kind of tilts up likely. And then when you lean down, the shoulders got to kind of roll under so your legs can swing upside down. You kind of notice that? The shoulder rolls under, and then you'll get closer to the wall. I'm pretty much right there, although I almost rolled over the other side. So let's take it so that our pelvis is centered on the bolster. And if you decide you want to move the bolster a little bit away from the wall, it's okay. Pull the blanket under your head, but you might play with that. So for instance, I'm just going to move it maybe ever so, just less than I don't know if it's less than an inch, but I kind of pulled it and then I felt my seat close to the wall, and that feels like an achievement. I like that. And then the verticality happens, right? The legs just flip upside down. I already feel a little tingly in my feet. So having a little bit of weight might be useful on the soles of the feet. So as you get some weight, feel the circulation of simplicity back towards the heart. So the heart gets its ultimate kind of recharge right now. Okay, if you can get the sand on the soles of the feet, if you want to be sand free, it's fine. Sometimes it's nice to have weightless legs. They're stepped on so much into the feet. Sometimes that's comfortable. So you decide, but really feel that anchor when we start with legs up the wall, that there is a simple, natural, there's a tilt here. And it's pretty intense if we're using the bolster, right? It lifts up the hips. You do not have to do any action. You can just be and use the props to support the bones and this circulation back to the heart, the lungs, the brain. And like I mentioned moments ago, if you're feeling a little bit congested, allergies or what have you, you can always do this with less height under the hips. You can add a little bit of height under your head, but just caution, right? If it feels like it's too much circulation drainage, you can always shift out and slide down and have your legs up on a bolster. Okay, so let's come into Viparita Karani. Take the arms so they're open out to the sides. You want to have them low. They're not going up on any blocks. They're just resting down onto kind of the sense of the bones of the floor, right? Just base camp is where we start. It's kind of base camp for the brain. Let the eyes rest back. Notice if you can find how to rest your eyes back into the brain. And making any adjustments that might work better for you. Maybe it's changing the sand to no sand or add sand. And then as you guide that circulation back towards the heart, just feel the in-breath through the nose, however you can let the breath flow in, whatever path it goes. But let the ribs expand. The belly gently lifts. And as you out breath, just letting go and feeling the bones even more centered, right? What does that mean, right? Feeling the hips slightly lifted. And it's very interesting just to feel how the leg bones lean into the wall, just purely for the science of how that reverses the flow back to our heart. It strengthens the abdominals, right? The diaphragm has a bit of an edge to work with on the in-breath. It's got to track down towards the belly, and the belly's lifted, so there's resistance. So just train the focus to sense the movement of the diaphragm, your primary respiratory. Right? You can feel that kind of track as the belly lifts. And just feel a few more cycles of breath. Your head is lifted on just a little bit of height. Maybe the blanket is really low. Maybe it's at the second. And maybe you curl it up a little higher. Maybe you curl it under the neck. I think it's useful to try it all different ways here for the blanket. You know, sometimes just a little roll under the neck can feel good on the neck sensation, the throat, the jaw. And now feeling where the tailbone has accessibility, right, to push a little bit into the bolster. So when I invite that focus, pressing the tailbone into the bolster, then the abdominals kind of fire up. So let's try to keep that awareness as we move the legs, the feet away from the wall. Feel that the sand is kind of pushing, right? It's the same weight as you began with this position, but as you start to guide the legs a little farther back, okay, maybe a little farther, you start to feel that sensation in the leg all the way up and towards the top of the hamstring. See if they can work like a uni leg, right? So they're both kind of uniting with the pelvis as far as how it's connected. There's two legs that come down. So feel that full reach, like the legs are trying to stay definitely like they're standing, right? You're not standing on the feet, but it has some similarities with the sand on it, like you'd be pushing. And then as you bend through the legs, feel that hinge, noticing if it's helpful for you to work on the hip motion when you bend the knees. Right, because knees, right, are definitely a little more delicate in some ways, right? Some of us will have that experience more than our hips, depending on where you're at right now. But when you motion the knees down, they're going to move apart. So take a nice reach up, be somewhat casual, just reach to the sand, slide it away. And then what we'll do is we'll just move back on the mat. So if your blanket is curled up, just maybe push it back. And then you're going to move your spine back all the way so that your feet are on the bolster. And you'll be in cobbler's pose. So knees out, feet together. You decide if your blanket needs to be folded one more time. I would encourage you to try to keep it as low as possible. And then just feeling kind of that center of the back of your head, the occiput, that shelf. If you were to kind of reach your fingers around to the base of the brainstem area, feels like it tilts a little bit back. And then just let your head rest firm. Support that length in the neck. Okay? Now, I'm pretty close to the wall, right? So my legs are supported by the bolster, sort of. But if you need more support, all you do is add some blocks. Let's take just a few moments, not a long time, but if you find you want to just feel what the block support could be like, even if you're still on the bolster with your legs close, okay? And some of us might slide farther back and use the blocks. Okay, but my emphasis is to continue that drain work that we started with moments ago. You don't have to lift your leg out, but this is the work we did moments ago. So that reverse flow back towards the heart, which is also through the groins, right? The lymph drain. So, and reversing that gravitational pull on the muscles and the pelvic floor. So the opposite of prolapse here. Well, when the legs were up, it was more that way. So when you are in this position, relax the pelvic floor, however that feels to you, just let your knees release a little bit out. The tailbone pressure is likely a little bit different, tiny bit different. Interlace your fingers and turn the hands to push up inside out towards the ceiling. And then maybe the arms go a little bit back over your face, maybe overhead. Just feeling the collaboration of the upper back. Yeah, don't push the edge on the shoulders here, but feel when the arms reach back. Breathe. Okay, let the spine lengthen. If you have difficulty with comfort in your neck, you can always fold the blanket up one more. Okay, now as your arms move back down, if you've got the blocks, slide them just to the sides, and let's take a little sequencing for our hips here. So, and when I shift back, I'm going to shift a little farther and make the blanket, fold it one more time. You might like that. You might find, oh, this one, a little bit more height under my head works better. Since we're going to intensify the work in the hip, take figure four with the left foot at the wall, the right ankle to the left knee. You might find when we activate into the hip area, you want something under your, a little more under your head, because it could be like, intense. So ease it up, okay? Be as close to the wall as you need so that you can get a really good figure four pose. So if I'm too close, you can tell, demonstrate too close. Right now, this is starting to bug my knee. Okay, so I want to be far enough back, so we're all different proportions here. So the distance for you will probably be a little different than me, but when I step my left foot up to the wall, I want to let my spine kind of flatten out. All right, so I can push and stretch out my back. And then as my right ankle's on the left knee, right, maybe just above the knee, then I still want to find that my back is in the concentrate of the back, it's softening. Okay, this is a good one to be real simple. Instead of pulling the knees towards your chest, you can take a block and press it to the inner right thigh. Okay, keep in mind the block focus is, there's three different, settings. So some of us, if the knee is far away, can kind of, almost poke the leg with the short end of the block. I tend to go with the widest. I find that that's the most complete for me. I can just press and breathe. Some of you might find, no, I want the short end so my elbows can relax more. All right, so the right foot's going to flex. You're going to kind of feel the tailbone just press. Feel the belly move with the breath. And you can do this without the block. You can be figure four pose, arms down by the sides. Really focus into the hip muscles, the adductor here. Maybe the glute. Okay. So let's take a moment with the ball here. What I want you to do is take any kind of therapy ball you have, and I suppose if you just have a tennis ball, it wouldn't be a bad thing for this one. But you'll push into the left foot, wall foot. We'll call this the wall foot. And the ball's going to go to the right buttock. Okay, so I'm going to scoop my tailbone under and just lift a little bit. That's probably as much as I can get to lift up anyway. And then roll the ball into the right buttock, land on it, and then move my hips side to side, massaging into the glute. Okay? Now, the left leg is kind of the wall leg, right? So it's also the one that's got the muscles kind of warmed up and heated. So as you swerve around and glide the tissues across the ball, the ball kind of pushes the skin around, right? It's full service, right? As far as its circulation into the glute. It shouldn't hurt, but it should feel like it's kind of in the way. It's pushing a little bit. And then just take the weight center, push firm into the left foot, move the ball out to the side and cross the right leg as far over that left leg that's comfortable for you. Left foot drops to the bolster, and then the knees go to the right. The ball might be nice to have, and you can kind of tuck the ball to the upper outer right thigh here. And then as you let your knees lean to the right, stretching that left IT band. Okay, you choose. If you want to add some sand to it, it's up to you on the left IT band. I find that that's a little too much. It's really more than an IT band, right? It goes up the lateral rotators. It might be just as well just to have the leg position, right? The right leg crosses over the left, the knees go right. If it's too much, you put more under the right thigh, right? You can put a block and a ball. If your knee's going over to the side, it's just way too much pressure. You can add more height under your thigh. You'd be surprised at using more. You still might feel a pretty good stretch. Okay. Yeah, so come into this shape. This is a obviously an opener for that left side of the leg, but it's a counter twist is what we call these. Okay. So the left foot doesn't have to push into the wall. You might kind of be guarded here when you slide the knees over to the right, almost like a fetal position. So if you start getting guarded, you can always back up and go back to this one, figure 4. And then kind of assess the situation and then take it into the counter twist. Up to you. Left arm is open. Some of us have sand on. Many of us probably wide. We already feel it. And then as you take a few more breaths here, just kind of scan the spatial outline of the hips. Both hips are feeling a little different. One is grounded, and one is a little lifted, so the left buttock is up off the floor. And now as you come back center, uncross, and then place the ball at the sacrum. Uncross. You might put your feet up at the wall so it's easier to get the ball to the base of the spine, right? It's less effort. If I have my feet on the bolster, I have to push more. So the wall is a really nice prop. I just love wall stuff. So the spine has a natural little rebound at the base here, which is where it loves to feel some rebound work, I think, is at the base of the spine. So the low back. So walk the feet out on the wall. Of course, if you're on a wall space, you don't have a lot of room. You have to kind of measure that so you don't knock things over. But you want to feel that the feet have a connection, pressing at the heels. They're apart. Feet are straight up and down, right? They're not turned out. And use the abdominal muscles to hold the balance here. And for some of us, we'll stay with the feet at the wall. And an option would be to have the hands down on the floor and then maybe take a leg up and then another leg up for some lower abdominal balance, but also an interesting stretch into the back. And you might find some areas actually try to achieve some energy so that you can get into this inversion. Okay, so don't be surprised if it's so shaky that you come back to the feet at the wall. It's fine, or one leg and then the other leg. That's kind of fun to do if you haven't tried that. Just tap a foot to the wall and then alternate. It's an interesting abdominal striving. Okay, this is just fun in between sides, even if it may not seem like, oh, it's so fun. All right. So as we switch sides, we're going to lower down the feet. Well, they're going to the wall. You're going to lift up and we're going to take figure 4 to the other side. So bridge pose all the way down. Okay. So the left ankle to the right knee. Now, when you slide the right foot down, if you feel like you want to get closer to the wall, it will be a little more intense. You could try that, but we don't want to hurt the knee at all. We don't want to cause any extra challenge there. So keep it simple, simple reach. The tailbone feels like it's in such a big arch. You might scoot a little bit to the wall to kind of let that low back kind of spatially release down. So close is not bad, but you find your block, if you like to add this part to it, and then just press to that left inner leg, finding the block direction that works for you. Maybe close your eyes and kind of feel when the block has a little bit more space on it when it's at its lowest setting. When you're pressing into it with the short end, maybe that feels good. You can palpate, get some improved circulation. Yeah, so as you press, feel the neck center. You know, a centered neck is also an arched one here on this position. So we're not trying to flatten it and put the chin to the chest. We're trying to feel just a light lift of the chin, the throat gently lengthen. And for me, my challenge on this is my lower back to feel comfortable. Okay, so add the ball in a few moments. You decide your timing. If this feels good for you, if you decide, well, I don't care for the block, but I really have some ambition to pull the right thigh in, you can always do these things. But sometimes just taking a different approach is healthy. Just to feel kind of the orientation of the bones so that you have a lot in your wheelhouse for practice. So taking a ball, now it is okay if you have it on either glute for this kind of exercise. You might push into your right foot, the wall foot, and then lower onto the ball. This might be a way you go. You might let your left leg kick up. You might put both feet at the wall. But feel that when the legs are a little elevated, you have a little bit more pressure. You know what I found that using, you know, like sometimes the tennis balls or the tune-up balls, if you have your feet up the legs up the wall and do that, it's quite an intense massage. So there's lots of things you can learn with all these different prop ideas, walls, more stuff than just the bolster and blankets and so forth. So roll, and you decide, you go, okay, there's my left glute. Maybe if my foot connects, maybe that's better. Okay, maybe it's just kind of so-so. But give yourself a few side to side so the musculature gets heated up, right? You're trying to roll so that you soften and warm up these areas. It's definitely hydrating for the muscle belly here. Get that fluid movement around the muscles. Okay. So now when you switch on down, you might keep the ball for a moment, lower the right foot, and then take the ball aside, cross the left leg over the right leg, knees to the left, maybe the ball under the leg on that left side. Maybe you have it farther down or none, okay? Now, I like to get a feeling of how the joint is responding, and I think with just experience and connecting into your personal story, right, as far as your bones go, you'll know, okay, this is the right edge for me to work with. And just working your way into crossing over, counter twist. When the left leg is over the right leg, and then they lean. And some of us will need more props under our leg to do this. Some of us might need a block and a ball. And you'd be surprised at how that can be helpful too. Maybe you need that farther out to the side. Yeah, perhaps. Maybe no props under the leg. Yeah, now the hip lifts, but it's not as if you're all of a sudden rolling to on your shoulder. You want your chest to be open. And there's an interesting sense. I'm getting more stretch in my waist here when I have my leg up higher on the left side for me. Feels pretty good. If I don't have this height, which is fine, I feel more in my waist, but when I take the height out, I feel more in my hip. So They're all important. It's not just all about the hips. Waists are good to work with too. Right? There's a lot of dynamic here, and it feels good to have them stretched out. So play around with that. Take a few more moments here in the counter twist. Okay. So with the waist and the abdominal area moving with the breath, we're going to set this up so when we go to horizontal chest opener, I think we'll be well prepared for all of our sage poses coming up in the next few minutes. Okay, now as you shift the knees up, very well, let's take the ball between the knees, place it, and we're going to take a couple drawbridges, all up to you how many and how you approach it, right? You might have your feet on the bolster. This seems kind of obvious, but I like if I have the wall and I'm not too slippy slidey, some days less than others, I'm going to lift up my hips and I'm going to move my blanket away because I have no interest in rounding my neck more. So I'm going to get the hips up so I'm more into a shoulder stand here. And then just lower the spine down. Now your arms can go with you. And they could also stay overhead. Yeah. And when you're taking this high of a drawbridge, it's really important that you don't let your head roll side to side. You want to keep the neck in line so that when you establish that lift with the hips, you're moving the stretch into your shoulders. Your arms could stay down. You don't have to move them overhead. Okay. Now let's take a moment when we do let the spine go fully down so the pelvis is grounded here. Take one more of these shoulder stand versions. Get set up so you feel success. There's plenty of space at your throat. Nothing's gonna crowd in there. And then as you press into your feet, use the movement of the tailbone to roll under. Let your arms reach overhead. Okay, and then press into the wall and let the spine still feel that rounded under and lift the hips up. If you're slippy slidey, right, which could happen, you might get closer to the wall. Sliding is just part of living as you do a practice. You slip and slide a little bit. Yeah, the closer you are to the wall, the higher you're going to get onto the shoulders, the more circulation into the endocrine glands right in the throat, which is such a great thing. We don't have many things we do for that. So as you keep that lift, tone in the legs, tone, tone, tone. Breathe all that circulation to the upper lobes of the lungs. Belly moves. And then as you let the spine, you can feel the ribs kind of open up. The arms could follow. And then let's take a shift, big shift here. Bring your knees in, take the ball out, and then just let your knees windshield wiper. You're going to be using your blanket. Just take a few moments, windshield wiper the knees side to side. Feel the ribs starting to move as well. Use the windshield wiper to warm up through the rib space. Right, rib swiping. Okay. All right. I bet someone's going to have a better way of choreographing this next one, but this is what I could really come up with. So you're going to just simply get into horizontal chest opener. So roll to a side, get all your blankets. So you're going to stack up into the fold. So you want to have a pretty good, corner folds. Some people do accordion folds too, but I just make it so I've stacked up my blankets and I'm going to add my bolster in next to it. Be a little distant from the wall so that you don't smash into it with your legs. So you could stretch them out. You might not stretch them out. You might keep them bent, but let's start to set up for this. So to prepare for the best here, we will put a block on the other side. Put it far enough away that you don't knock it over with your head. And then you're going to sit in front of the bolster. Okay. Have your sand nearby. Yeah. I find I need a block under my pelvis so I feel comfortable in my low back, but this is definitely taught without one. Okay, so you get to decide. I tried it again last night. I have somehow graduated. I think of it as graduated to the block on this. So if you lower back like so, and you can do this without feeling an ache in your back, I suppose you could, but I'm of the variety where I want to feel supported and like I can actually restore and kind of replenish. There's not a bracing feeling in my nervous system. So I put a block under the back of my pelvis and it's at the lowest setting. We've all done this before. Now your block on this version doesn't have to be right against the bolster, but it might be. Okay, this is one where you've already warmed up a little bit. So you might have a little bit of space between your bolster and your block. And that's going to offer you more stretch here in the center. Now, if you've got a bolster that's really, really wide, this stuff can get challenging. I'm starting to just play around with bolsters at different spots and realizing those really wide bolsters are just really hard on the back. So even though they look nice and plump, but you don't want too much bulk here in the back. You want just the right size bolster. Of course, I'm short, so maybe that's part of it. But as you lengthen, take a sandbag and place it either ribs or thigh widths. Okay, so you decide, is it going to go across, right at the base of the sternum, right above the belly button, that zone? Is it going to be one where you stretch your legs down and you just luck out that your feet touch the wall and you place the sand across the tops of the thighs? And you decide. Yeah, you could do either with the knees bent, right? You don't have to have the legs straight and still have your sand here. But open out the chest. Yeah, you find if the blankets are too high up, you can just slide one out. You don't want to feel too much pressure at our neck. So you've got to feel, can I let the jaw gently lift? Jaw lifts, chest opens, and center, as we do in many of these shapes, to receive the benefit of circulation in the respiratory muscles here. If you're where the shoulders can actually release back, you can nudge the bolster with your elbows sometimes. And just get it in a good spot where when you breathe in, the ribs kind of push out and expand. And when you out breath, come back to the center. Yeah, some of us will feel the in-breath is where we think we center ourselves. But it may be the out-breath where we can get grounded. Not just pulling in, but both motions are essential for feeling centered, in and out breath. And now walk the feet in so the knees are pointing up. Feel them kind of tip a little side to side. If you have sand on the front of the thighs, lower down than the belly, just move it over to the side. But feel the knees tip side to side and how it kind of presses the bones on the block. And we're going to work our way to side sage and just be so curious. I know some of us will kind of get into it like we're taking a nap. We kind of just roll to the side and we relax into the shape. But, just be curious about on the way how it affects your rib cage and your hip flexor, right? This can be really helpful for the abdominal stretch. So I just let the sand push it down, take the block that's under the pelvis and just help yourself to roll to the left hip. And I like a couple blocks that I'll have overhead in a moment. So lean into your left hip. Okay, now when you get ready to come into this, some people need a ball, some use sand as well. So we'll have our bolster. Maybe if you have a round bolster, you could replace the flat one with a round one, if some of you have that. It's just nice for the rib motion, right? It kind of lifts and curls. And this is why you want something with just the right amount of height, right? Something too flat is not going to be that great in the low back. So the ball, I place it on the inside of my right knee. And then when I lean into the bolster, okay, I try to feel my ribs stretch a little bit, right? And as I get my head back towards the blanket, I first want to see where my block is going to be. And I'm going to stack mine up. So now I've got one on the lowest setting, you can see, and then one I'm going to move a little higher. I'm going to push it a little bit as I look back to the right so that it's easier on my shoulder. I don't need to make anything harder on it, right? And then I'll set my sand on my side. Yeah. If you love the stretch in the waist area, just put the sand up onto that whole little, valley, right, from the rib dropping, and then it moves down to the hip. So let it be weight bearing. And then as the right arm maybe starts to take off, you get to decide, do you move the arm back? Do you stretch it up and over? Do the ribs reach? Just be really curious here about the opportunities. And maybe the big check in here is, how is my neck? Even trying to look extra hard at like a screen or something can challenge the neck. So you might find just to close your eyes and just decide, okay, is this block thing going to work? Is it too high? Go with feeling. Right, like braille, like you're feeling your body touch onto the props and making the choice of, yeah, this is I got it, I understand, right, where the arm could be between the bolster and the blankets. I love this part with the arm between, because that's for me the most comfortable part, I think, is my left arm, just resting. Okay, so feel as you come into side sage now, that you're leaning into your left hip, the left knee bends, so the left thigh is really close to the bolster. It should be next to it, not on top of it, right next to it. And if there's tension kind of spiking up into the shoulder area, you may not know what actual muscles being tightened, but you can feel it grip. You just put a block higher, you add more, or you let the right arm go on the side, which is fine. So maybe you let your neck relax more. Pull the shoulder center back, take a few moments here, breathing. And there's only so much we can focus on, right? It's not as if we're all connecting to what our neck is doing and our breath and our ribs and our back. It's going to be one area at a time that you do a check. So make sure that your head is resting. For me, that's my challenge, is to let my neck relax. And maybe if you lean on your ear, it's not restful. Maybe you roll the back of your head a little bit. That works pretty good. Whether the arm is down or over or out. Okay, now when we do prepare here to shift sides, let's take it in towards hands, knees, gentle. So you let your sand fall off. You'll roll left and you'll come onto hands and knees. You decide if you want to take any extra stretch in the hamstrings. This might be, we will get there, so it might be too much to add at the moment, but You just kind of feel the palms that stretch out wide with the hands. And then feel if you can round the back, chin to chest. And then naturally arch the spine, hips reach back, lifting the heart. And round your back, scooping, moving through the tailbone, and then naturally arch. Okay, now take side stage on the other side, just one more side stage. You only got 2 sides. Okay, so when you take it to the other side, you're gonna lean into your right hip, and you let the left leg reach back so the hip flexor gets quite the stretch. So I encourage you to really work with this reach of the thigh, that left thigh back, the right knee's in that bend, and then as you lean, the second side you might approach, you might have your little habits from one hip to the next. So be curious. I mean, if you let the waist really kind of go, really go to town with the stretch, I imagine everything else is going to kind of feel more comfortable, especially the neck. So, I learned things about this with practice, like, the neck feels better on this side. Maybe it's because I'm allowing my leg to stretch a little bit back, my ribs to extend. I think it affects all of it. It's going to affect something that you might need help with. Like for you all know it's my neck. Okay. Maybe for you, it's the shoulder. So as the right arm is between the bolster and the blankets, and the left arm stretches over. Okay. Yeah, these are all the habits of getting into this are habits that are good to form for when you do legs up the wall, just by the way, because this movement of the arm is important to understand when you roll upside down. This kind of stuff can be really curious for my ribs, my back. So come into the shape, feeling that reach of the upper arm, whatever side you're on now. And just feeling that blend of movement, breathing. Maybe there's a faint sense of the hip, kind of a hip echo here when it stretches the arm overhead and the leg back. And you might feel when the weight is plopped kind of into that right hip. For me, I'm leaning back on the back of my head on this one, but if I turn so the side of my head is on the blanket, it's still pretty good too. Just depends on what works best for your neck, right? So make sure that you have the comfort of leaning in, breathing. Really warming up this rib area. This is important. We're going to be doing some pretty deep twists coming up and hip and pigeon and so forth. So I want you to feel like this side is getting kind of brushed with breath and circulation and range of motion. All it takes is lying on the props for this one. And now feel the weight into that right hip. And then as you start to lean a little further into the rib cage on that right side, okay, we're going to shift it. And this, let's see, this left leg is going to be moving forward coming up. So let's see how this kind of rounds out. You can move the sand on back to the left side. You're going to roll through the ribs, like get this waist area to find its own movement. We use a lot of extremity stuff to get things, arms, legs, but really feel that you can move in this rib space. So roll the ribs, your rib barrel, okay? Come on up to sit when you're ready, and then take your blocks from behind, and we'll take a seat, as I mentioned, but I want you to pull your blankies in so they're right next to your bolster, okay? All right, so this is what we're going to set up for. We're going to set up for a seated, little seated field series. So I'm going to have a block in front, and I'm going to have it the lowest setting, and the left foot's going to be on it, so the side of the foot. So I don't have the bottom of my foot down, I'm on the side so the inner leg can stretch. But you know, some of us might find the block this low is, well, actually, if you go lower than the block, it's going to feel easier, just an FYI. If I keep stacking my blocks, it's getting me ready for, you know, things like foot behind your head or something, which we'll never think on. But that's the idea with the block. It adds intensity. So if you decide, yeah, I'm not going to use the block, that's fine. You might be a little more pleased. So the block, I like it for the bones because it kind of sets them. So you're going to take a sandbag and place it on the right thigh. Let this thigh know, right? You're going to be working your way into this right hip. So just put the sand as a hip hugger and then place the ball, if you like, under your right knee. You can be ball free on it too. Okay. Let's take a moment where we reach back with the hands on the blankets, or you reach your hands together, interlace and stretch your chest. But find the value, I think they're both pretty good here, on this measuring the openness here in the upper chest area. Yeah, so the movement of the chin is going to affect that, the movement of your shoulders. Okay, now turn left, bring the right hand to the left knee, and then rotate. And I want you to let the left hand, maybe it moves a little farther back. If your hands were combined together, you can reach your left arm behind your back and rotate through the ribs. Yeah, feel the movement of breath. Be careful on the knee, right? Not that anyone's doing anything wrong. Just notice if you clutch onto the knee. If you're below the patella, right, that would be fine. So you feel like you're kind of on the shin a little bit. A little squeeze. That's kind of nice. Okay, now come back center. And I'm going to give an option for those that want to take the twist a little further. So take the ball out if you have one. Take the left leg, cross it over the right leg so the left foot is on the floor. So I'm sitting and my left foot crosses over and I'm still on the bolster, right? I haven't taken myself off of it. And as I take the turn, we're going to go right. So right hand back to the blanket, left arm to the inside layer of the left leg, and I press and twist. Whew, I really like this one. Like the cross fibers in the back and definitely working in my ribs. Yeah, this one might take your breath away if you just kind of inquire slowly. And feel the weight in both sitting bones, not just the right one, but also the left. And then lean back. Yeah, this one is demonstrated often when the poser is kind of leaning back with the chin lifting, right? So you might find, oh, I can actually do that and kind of lean back and work the shoulders and the ribs. And then turn back forward and take the sand off the right thigh. And then take the left leg back behind you. You've got nothing behind you but your blankets, at least in close proximity. You're coming into pigeon pose, so the right thigh is bending, your hip is stretching, your left leg is back. And then as the elbows lower down on the floor or on blocks, or maybe on another bolster, okay? You can lower down so the right hip feels that resistance. And the left leg can stay either releasing or perhaps bending. And just feeling as you bend, just a little bit of bend brings that into the right hip. Breathing. Okay, feeling where the pressure is with the right thigh, noticing if the hip is a little bit up. For some of us, we can also do things like keep the left foot down. You can always put a ball under your rear on the right side if it's particularly intense, right? You decide, well, this is just too much. You can just sit on the ball and it's pretty helpful, right? It kind of loosens up the tissues. It's amazing, right? How helpful the ball can be. You can be a little higher up with the arms. Okay, now let's come out of this. So as we move the ball aside, if we have it, we're gonna let the weight lean into that right hip, press over to the right hip, and then as you swing the left leg forward, take a moment with the windshield wiper. So blocks go to the side of the mat. You're gonna take the feet forward off of a little farther forward, so you're sit down on the floor next to the bolster, elbows on the bolster, and let the knees swish side to side. So kind of getting some fluid movement, some flushing of the tissues, knees shifting windshield wiper. Yeah, so it's more about knee than it is hip, right, on this with the movement. At least that's what I'm thinking and feeling. So you're pushing into the glutes, each side you're massaging into the glutes. Okay. Now walk the hands back on the bolster and carefully lift yourself back up. And then switch the sides. So you'll bring the right foot forward, right? You're going to reach forward with the block under your right foot and then add your sand to the left thigh. Ball option under left knee. If it's already off of the floor, then you just put something in there. If it makes it so the knee pops up a lot, right, like you're close, then you might go without the ball because you're going to keep tractioning this inner thigh. But if it feels like I like that, it feels cushiony and good, then just use it. But let's take it this side. So we'll bring the arms back, interlace the fingers or hands on the blanket, either way, and then feel as if you're trying to get your upper back to reach so that it's not as if I'm just pushing my ribs. I'm trying to line it up so I'm lengthening up through the natural curves of the spine. But I'm not here. I'm not trying to round here. I'm trying to lean back into my sitting bones. Just gently lift up at the heart. It's not an easy move, but I want us to have some of the curve of the spine so that when we take the twist to the right, we reach the left hand to the right knee, and then you rotate. Okay, so feeling the turn. So if my hips are in this position, it gives me some better balance for the hip muscles. The belly works its way forward and back. The ribs work their way around to twist. Shoulders back, at least right shoulder. And now come back center and move the ball aside and see if you can cross the right leg over the left. Now, if this doesn't happen, you would just keep your foot on the block. And the same everything, ball and everything just stays and you turn to the left. But if you find that it works for you to cross the right leg over the left, really it's the whole balance between the center of the left thigh to the knee. The sand is higher, right? And then you just reach the right arm to the inside of the right leg and you take that turn, and probably the area that feels the deeper move is that upper back, right? It's going to feel upper back muscles. Right? We don't need to name them all, but upper back muscles feel some resistance. So I'm trying to work on my ribs moving. The stretch in your waist might feel more elaborate on one side than the other, which is pretty nice to feel the differences in one side. But really let your hips sink here. If that makes you round a little bit more by kind of setting down on your sitting bones, find that next inhale and give yourself a little bit of breath up. Up the ribs, breathing, arm is pressing. Wonderful. But try to keep even more movement of the heart forwards. There you go. Arching the spine. Okay, now unwind. Turn forward and take the sand off. And now we'll take that right leg and stretch it back. So if I move the right leg back and I decide, I need something under my left seat, I can use the ball. If you find, I'm good, you don't have to, right? This is just an option. And some of us, it's important to have it. And some we're just versed in not using anything at that area. So we just work with what we got as far as our range of motion. But if it hurts the knee, use a ball under the seat. It will affect how much pressure goes out down to the left knee. And if it doesn't hurt your knee and you can complete this angle with the left leg, feel that as the arch occurs through the spine, now forward folding. Now this is a good message for us to kind of keep in our memory bank when you do like a seated forward fold without the pigeon position, because this keeps the arch, the natural kind of tilt in the pelvis, so that when I do go forward and down onto my forearms, I still have the natural curve in my back. Right? I'm not just like hunkering down and dropping. Even if I do drop down to the floor with my elbows, you've got your bolster under your pelvis, so it plumps up the circulation into the low back with the leg lifted. It's good stuff. Okay. Yeah, feel the top of the back thigh either bending into the knee, or maybe you circle the foot. Maybe you hook the toes under, and that feels pretty good. Yeah, feel the elbows pressing, feel the arch through the spine. Breathing slow. Okay, so let's work our way towards a little bit of energy into the full body awareness of arms, legs, lower back. And we'll kind of merge them. So as we put our weight into our left seat, we're just going to move our weight down to the left rear. If you have a ball, move it aside. And then as we come around, just turn so you're facing away from the wall. So move your blocks to the sides of your mat and pivot. And let's take an energetic motion where we use our blanket under our knees. Okay, even if you've got the best knees ever, with pressure, put some padding under them. And then take your bolster across. I'm going to move mine so they're not looking, can see everything. I'm not going to worry about this blankie. And I'm going to stretch into my hip flexors. So reach the thigh lids on top of the bolster. You can walk your hands farther forward. Your feet are pushing into the wall. And be careful you don't walk them too far up. This is a challenging one. You do want to be rooted with the feet. Now, if it's too much to have your feet at the wall, you can scoot away. Okay, but strive to get that length, right? The abdominals from the belly button up, trying to stretch that area forward. Okay, and then come back to table and move your bolster to the side. Okay, and stretch forward again. So I'm reaching, got nothing under my hips now, just a blanket under my knees. Stretch and come back to table. Round the back to cat pose, chin to chest. Inhale, arch the spine, hips reach back. And then as you push a little farther back, fingers spread out, you're going to lift up the knees and then let the heels alternate walking down so the heels rest towards the edge of the wall, right up on the baseboard if you got that. Or you might feel like you can get your heels down at the base of the wall. This takes, I think, kind of a daily practice to give this a try. And the calves will get a little more flexible, and certainly the feet will. But it is something you got to do a little regularly, like use the wall for the stretch of the legs. And it feels good to have this range. So let the arms push the floor away, not just hands, but arms. Yeah, feel that circulation shift. Walk the feet close together. Let the heels lift up at the wall. And now we'll bring the right foot forward. Now give yourself some time and patience to get here. So I want you to take your time to step into the lunge. Get some blocks. If it's really awkward, don't worry. We all have awkward moments getting from a downward dog to a lunge. But we can make it. Okay. So have that right foot step forward so that you can feel the kind of the kinesthetic quality of a bending leg and the underbelly of the thigh try to stretch it out. So lengthen the right leg, go from bend to lengthen. And then as you straighten out, you're going to feel the hips slowly tilting back, and the left heel is a little bit up at the wall for me. Okay, but you might have your heel down, you might have it up. Okay. Feeling that reach through the bottom of that right foot, as well as the back leg reaching. Breathing. So we're going for legs extending here. Both of them. Even the back leg it's not that bent. Okay, so let's start to get a feel of the chest reaching forward. Of course, my blocks are a huge part of this. If I didn't have them, I would have a bit of a rounded back. It would be more so. So bend the knee, that right knee, because the left leg will still stay pretty extended, I bet, when you bend the right leg. Then use that ability to push off the back foot, spring load, step the left foot, take a wide stance with the feet stepping out as wide as you're comfortable here. I would try to take it almost to the edge of the sticky mat, and then have your arms reach back to the legs, to the lower leg bones, and take that forward bend. Just kind of nestle into the head lower than the heart. Maybe nod your head a little side to side. And just feel the sweeping motion of your breath. Okay, if you're feeling okay in the sinuses, this is a really good one. You probably will feel them even more so. Whether you're feeling challenges or not, this is going to definitely flush it out. So let the brain release down and just feel that awareness in the face, right? The facial muscles get a little bit of blood flow. So good. This is a great one. Let your head nod side to side. Okay, if it doesn't feel good to hold this far down, you're shaky, you can bring the hands higher up. They can also go to the blocks. You can move the blocks forward on top of the blanket if you have that nearby. You can also bring your hands above the knees and hold and bend your knees. There's all different opportunities here for making it work for you. Okay, step your feet closer together. Make your way back to your blocks. So they're at a level that's supported on a floor, on a blanket. Okay. And then step the right foot back, reach back to the wall with your heel. And first things first, just feel that left leg bending. Feel the lunge and the stretch back into the right thigh. So notice the bone structure. If I have a wall, I can put a little bit of force into the leg for resistance. And kind of rebound with your breath. This is a challenging one, right? This requires some health of the heart and the lungs just to stay solid. Okay, and then let the back leg lengthen. So you might decide the left leg lengthens first. Maybe that's what you push back. Maybe walk the blocks back with you, and then feel if the right heel will lower a little bit at the wall. Maybe it won't go at all. Yeah, I find my dominant leg, this calf is really different. It has, just different, the sense of movement through the tissues, the cross fibers it just feels like it's a little more protective, right? So it could be different from one side to the next, and you have a wall to put your heel up on. But you can also kind of play with gravity. So it might be how you bend the left leg and stretch it back that affects your back calf. So you could do a little bit of kind of tug of war, bend and lengthen, and bend, and keep an idea of lengthen, not necessarily straighten. So that I'm trying to push into my left foot, all the corners of the bottom of the foot, not just the heel or the ball, and lengthen out. Breathing. Good, yeah. So sometimes that alternating pulse feels kind of interesting on this one, reaching. Great. So take another few moments here with that length. And now when you start to transition out of this, we're just going to stay kind of in the lunge world. So we'll bend through the left knee, and we're going to lower down through that back knee. And as you bring that knee down, lengthen out through the back, the top of the thigh, right, the quad. Feel the hip flexor get that stretch. Okay, I got an idea now on this one. All right, so I imagine we can all use a little bit of hamstring help and just the quadricep length. So we all can use that support. So when we come back with the left knee, what I want us to do is we're gonna flip, okay. We're gonna turn so we're on our back. So take your blanket so it's under your head, you know, a good quarter fold. Okay. Yeah, so you're gonna do a quarter fold with a blanket and you're gonna move into the leg up. We're gonna do brain float. Okay, so I want you to have your belt. After all, I decided we're gonna use a belt. You're gonna have a sandbag. This is the best at the wall. I love this pose at the wall. So I got my bolster on the side yard. It's not at the wall. It's near it. And I'm gonna set myself up. So my right leg is gonna go up and my left leg's gonna extend down. Too many blankets here, I guess. And I'm gonna push. Now, your leg's gonna get longer than you start with. Well, it is. It's gonna feel like it lengthens out. So I would have just a little micro bend with the left knee so that, you know, the knee is off of the ground. You're kind of working into your rear muscle. You can feel a little bit. It's not painful. It's just a little activation. You get your belt and you could do the brain float. You could do the leg float where the belt's around your ribs if you prefer that. But as many of us kind of get into this line where we buckle up and make this quiet. Okay. Scoop up the right foot with the belt. Make a big loop. All right, so that right thigh is up and the left thigh is going to have sand. So I imagine that now that you've been pushing the wall a little bit, the leg's just naturally straightening out, just with you forgetting about it. So if the sand goes down the length of the thigh, I really love how this feels in my back with the foot at the wall. I can feel the energy. Now, this kind of brings me back to like, you know, in school, right, with Iyengar yoga, we would work this till sometimes your back would feel what would almost get like well, when you got up the next day, you go, oh, what happened to my back? So we would really work this one. So I want you to just find a way to let your tailbone feel a little natural contour. Don't need to make it rub that hard, but when you take the belt, this will kind of alleviate it, I think. You're going to lift your head up into the belt. And just let the spine now lengthen, right? So you're not pushing into the low back and causing any extra kind of rupture of pressure. You're just lengthening. And the hamstring is delighted. And the quad just doesn't know how good it is for it anyway. Okay. Arms can be down. They can be open out to a T. You get to decide. And it is fine if you have traction in the neck, but if it feels too much, you're not content with it, you can make the belt loop a little bit wide. You can widen it out and lower your head towards the blanket. And that might happen anyway for you. Right? You might lower your head back in time with the hamstring loosening up. But breathing. Feel the shoulder centers back. And shoulders share, right, a whole connection with scapula and then the front, right, with the collarbones. It's really kind of interesting. What is connecting your shoulders? Just to find some nice balance there. And you made it this far, stick around. All right, now if there's some resistance with the right leg, I want you to kind of continue that connectivity even as we change sides. So if I close my eyes and kind of sense my right side has a little more back line stretch for certain, but this left side has an interesting sensation too. They're opposites, right? So I would just put the sand away, you know, off to the side. Don't go tuck it into the drawer, but put it away so you don't have anything interfering with weight. And then when you switch sides, you might just bend the right knee a little bit. You might hold the belt. And then as the left foot comes up, let that transition be ever so interesting, right? Because it's such a difference in the leg muscles. But the right leg can reach down to the wall, push, and all that blood flow that's already in it from the last position will help you with the second side. It helps quite a bit. So when I move my sand to the right thigh, right? So the wall can give you quite a bit of information, right, for your back muscles. So if you feel like you need the belt looser, it will change things up. So one side to the next could be slightly different with how your bones are going to receive. And what am I trying to feel? I'm trying to feel when I push into the wall, the connection into the lowest kind of sheath of my back widening out. So where I get the challenges, I don't want to dig into one area in my back. I want to spread it out. So with the sand on my right thigh now, I'm working with the ribs expanding. Right? And my head might go back. You might be holding your belt. No one has to have their belt behind your head. You could do something simple, a little different, just holding your belt with your hands or holding your belt with your head. Okay? Arms are open. Give a few moments here. Feel the balance through the spine. Feel the foot push into the wall. The wall foot makes the big difference, doesn't it, from when we do this without the wall, because it changes how your lower back, lengthens. Let's really kind of kick it into the curve, the contour of your spine, and also the contour that moves into a hip. So we'll take the sand now, and we're just going to slip it over to the left side of the hip on the floor. And then take your belt off your head. And when you lower your head back to the blanket, we're going to bend the left knee and take the belt off, but keep this connection. So cross the left leg over to the right side, maybe on a bolster, maybe on a block, you get to decide, and add your ball right to the sacrum. Okay? Take the sandbag to the outer left thigh. Keep a blanket under your head. If you need it higher, that's fine, but you do want something to kind of match the balance through the spine. So as we get into our final poses here, feel the stretch open with the left armpit chest, with the ribs. Yeah, this is a nice one to do. Well, sometimes we do this earlier on, but generally we do it later when all the parts have they've been heated up, kind of warmed up and juiced, and then we can just loosen up and let the body kind of hold space for full stretch, full twist. Right, all the body spaces work on this one. It's a chest opener. There's a side stretch. There's a back bend. Right, there's a forward bend because the leg is kicking over to the side. So of course your spine gets a stretch. But there's always a twist here. So feeling the breath. So with the next inhale, filtering through the nose, and then letting it go. You can feel where the hip bones are stretching. One is pressing down, one is stretching. But notice the right side of the torso. If it's kind of getting a little shorter, you might bend the right knee a little bit further, the bottom leg. So you can get a little bit more length on the bottom side. Okay? And that's the side we're going to stretch across next. So slide the sand off of the hip and then move the ball. If you need to roll a little bit on the glute, go for it. You decide, well, I'm going to roll that glute a little bit. You can push your weight onto it while you move your bolster to the other side of your mat. You can kind of nudge the glute. It doesn't have to be some really fast movement across. It could just be pushing into it. And then as you just release, you can cross the right leg over to the bolster, add the ball to the right back, towards the sacrum. Actually, it's the same back as the last side, isn't it? You didn't get a new back all of a sudden, did you? Zoom doesn't give out new backs. Okay, so sand onto the side of the right thigh, and then right arm is open. Just the practice makes it like, oh, I got a muscle memory, I got a prop memory, how I put my things on, how I slide things around. But the bottom leg is where I find I have to remind myself, it's okay to bend your bottom leg. It's okay. It's definitely going to help. So you can feel more contour in the ribs, in the spine, and the right arm could be open. You can let your head roll to the right. And just simply feel the movement of the breath. Feeling your head roll to that right side. Now, if you notice that it stretches your chest, like the armpit chest area, I want you just to kind of take note of that. So when we do our final pose, you might end up putting a blanket under your spine so you can keep, because this area might be tight, the connection, the circulation in the armpit to the heart could be restricted. One side more than the other. It's something to just notice. These little subtle things I think are interesting on our circulation. You might notice, oh, okay, I can work on balancing these out. Right? It's the only body you can try to balance, right? Your body. When you get the chance. Take a few more moments. See what you can let go. If there's a hip, letting go on the floor, a hip is lifted. Now, when you move the ball and you get ready to take a little lift of, maybe you're going to roll, actually, let's not forget that. Some of us roll the glute. So roll, take the sand off the hip and maybe roll a little bit into the glute. And the last pose, you might use the ball under the sacrum. So kind of get a feel. Does this feel like it's helpful in the very lowest part of your back to the glutes? And then as you come down off of that ball, unless you keep rolling, you're going to either roll up the spine to sit or take a casual roll to the side and come up and take both blankets. So if you've got two, I want you to have one of your blankets. So it's going to roll up into a tube, and you might, okay, if you're taller than me, you're probably going to have to unfold the thing and then roll it up. Okay, so you make kind of like a pool noodle. Okay, pool noodles. All right, then the blanket back here can go up on top. You choose. It's kind of a fun thing to try. Why not? You can always make the blanket a little bit, you can fold it a different way and roll it up if you don't like this big long noodle. Okay, so I'm going to place my blocks under my bolster. My blocks are at the second to the third setting. If you just happen to have more than two blocks, use them all. Just stack them up, have more height. If you want to put your blanket here instead, that's up to you. I guess we're not going to use the ball. That's not going to work, is it? Okay, so I'm going to slide my blanket right at the base of the spine, and then let my head rest onto the blanket across. So I've got a little bit of openness in my chest. Okay? Again, you can always bring your legs up the wall if you decide, I just can't do a class without that at the end. That's fine. Sand across the ribs. And if you can push the sand so it feels like it is higher than the belly button this time, it's not just above, it's higher. I've seen some people really declare that they really like the sand up at the collarbones, and I guess it just hasn't, I just feel like it's scary. So I'm here, but so you can change it up, what works for you. Okay, sand can go from heart to belly as well. Rest your arms, you can reach them out, they can go back to cactus pose. And as the legs release forward, they may touch a little bit at the feet to the wall. But just feeling that range of expansiveness with the chest and feeling what's behind you, right? You're trying to expand out in not just the front ribs, but the back ribs, right? The whole barrel. But with the influence of breathing, let the body center, let the nervous system, which is the challenging piece, let it go. Just returning the body to a state of balance and peace. Relax the mouth, feel the breath through the nose. And just feel that natural current, whether it goes in through the nose and out through the mouth. You decide ultimately, but feel just the movement of the ribs expanding. Let's take a few more moments of strength training for the breathing muscles. You know, with the shoulders back and the chest just fanning open. Let the feet walk up onto the bolster's edge so that the knees point up and in towards you. And when you move the sand aside, you might find just this delicate balance of the arch of the spine with the knees bending. This is almost as if you were pulling your knees to your chest, but you have this work into the spine with the blanket. So I really like this one because I don't have to pull and tighten into my legs. I can just receive both the stretch of my ribs, my spine, a little bit my lower back. All right. Now, as you walk the feet a little farther out on the bolster, right, you only got so far you can go with your feet, otherwise it'll collapse. Just feel the little last tug of the lower back arching, that tailbone, the breath as it pulls in through the nose, feeling how the spine extends. Tailbone presses back. Okay. Now bring the knees towards each other so you can go left or right side. You decide which side you're going to roll to. And then bring the hands down. Let the hands push you up and take a seat. You might find the blanket stacked up and this little tilt kind of works nice for our hips, right? Like meditation cushions give you that tilt, okay? So the pelvis, you actually kind of fold from your pelvis, not your spine. So this is a nice basin. And just let the hands join so your palms are uniting. The spine unites towards the heart center. And as we bow into our hearts, take a moment internally, breathing in wellness. And as you exhale, bowing into the space behind your heart. Namaste.